not too heavy an agenda, but before we get to tonight's business, did want to make a couple of notations. First of all, we're again joined by Amy Quissel, is it Quissel?
Quessel.
Quessel, Town Council. We'll be going over a decision, and hopefully with her guidance, we'll get it right. Moreover, this is the last meeting for a couple of our members, Steve and Frank. I've enjoyed working with you. I hate to see you go. I'm sure I'm speaking for the rest of the members. It's been a pleasure to have you both, and perhaps I'll see you again on some board, if not this one. And to explain Tim's absence, I think I'll leave it to Tim because he had a bit of good news last week, and he had better places to be, better things to do. So Tim, I'll leave it to you. I thought rather than announce it at our last meeting, I'd let you do the honors.
Yeah, I was not present at the last meeting to attend to the birth of my son, who is now here and happy and healthy, and Thomas is home, hopefully napping.
Maybe now.
Oh, you want him awake right now.
So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations, Tim.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
All right. Why don't we try to get through some internal stuff real quick. Under Planning Board Business and Policies, Steve, who has been, Steve Hornsby, who has been our representative, Planning Board's representative to SERPED, his term expires May 22nd. And I trust you're looking to
Yeah, I can
continue to
continue.
serve, unless there's any other member that is anxious to represent us for at SERPED. I'd entertain a motion to reappoint Steve Hornsby as the SERPED rep for the Planning Board for a term May 22nd to May 22nd, 2020. Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Another pen?
Today is 4/16, 20th. I'm looking at his term expiring. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, no, thank you.
We have some bills to pay. I hope folks have had a chance to look at them. There's a bill to Horsley and Witten for $3,021.25, which is peer review. It's not peer review, it's, they are the consulting engineer for the Norton Village Center, so it's out of that, I think it was $50,000 grant.
Roughly.
Then there is a peer review, again, the Horsley Witten, $1,545. That was for the Blue Star project, buildings 1 through 5. Another Horsley Witten bill for $1,677.40. Again, a peer review for Blue Star, but this was for building 7. And that's it for bills. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Just some, and then we have minutes for March 20. March 26th. April 2nd. And April 9th. Have folks had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, are there corrections to any of the three?
As mentioned just a moment ago, April 9th, just to make the note that Amy was not present at the April 9th meeting. She's listed as attendee. So if we can just strike that.
Any other additions or corrections? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve all 3 sets as corrected
I'll need to abstain from one. I'm not sure if that,
for the,
This says future meetings, April 30th. Today's the 16th.
we hadn't set a meeting for post-election, so the
Okay.
16th had already been set, but there was no meeting for post-election,
Got
so
it.
we set the April 30th meeting. And Tim, you're abstaining for the April,
9th,
I'm sorry?
the 9th. Just in terms of if you're gonna vote on it as a set, I'm
Okay.
not sure if that would,
Well, then we'll do them March 26th, April 2nd. Is there a motion for those 2 sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving minutes as presented and corrected for March 26th and April 2nd, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
I abstain as to the Bernie and Phil portion.
I'm sorry?
I abstain as to the Bernie and Phil portion of the March 26th. I abstained, I was,
But you were here for the rest of the meeting, and the
Yeah.
minutes,
the minutes reflect you,
yeah, so you don't have to abstain from the minutes themselves, because you were here, you recused yourself, and then rejoined, so you're good.
okay,
I mean, if you want to abstain, that's your prerogative, but,
that's fine.
all right, so, I'm sorry, was there that was unanimous?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last set of minutes, April 9th, is there a motion to approve as presented?
As corrected.
I'm sorry, corrected.
Motion to approve April 9th minutes as corrected.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Go.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
abstain.
So it's,
6:01.
okay. I guess that takes care of our internal business. First item on the agenda is the Fairland Farm decision. Have that. This is the most recent,
Yes,
okay.
just sent this afternoon.
Okay. Were there comments or discussion? I'm sorry.
I guess I should just point out that yesterday, I had sent comments that, or Amy's version, but the version I had given her wasn't complete at the time, so I had to add the last 3 meetings to get the summary of those to you all. So Joe and Amy hadn't had the chance beforehand to review and make any edits, so just bear that in mind, that we'll probably need some wordsmithing on those, whether we do it tonight or you instruct me to do so after.
What version is this? Is this with everything?
It's with everything.
This is the same one that you sent out this afternoon, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I just wrote some notes on that. Just want to make sure I'm using the same copy.
Just, if are we gonna start going through this, or at this
Yeah.
point, or?
If we,
Okay.
I don't know if you want to do it page by page or just jump in.
Well, very minor. The first, under finding facts, general findings, section 1, second sentence, it ends in the word on, which doesn't seem like it needs to be there. So again, wordsmithing, but
Oh,
says proposes to construct large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installation that will generate 2 megawatt alternate, 8.7 megawatts DC on, and it just ended there, so.
that was a typo.
I think there was
Changes.
something that was
I did
deleted
cut-
after
I
that.
did track
and-
changes,
yeah,
so,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
it always does
so
that.
just, remove that.
Anything else on that first page?
Yeah, and item number 6, that last sentence, I think you want to say the applicant requested to be withdrawn without prejudice. and then that's the planning board approved it. It says the applicant withdrew the permit. I think they requested that they withdraw without prejudice, and I think we approved it that way.
I think that makes sense. Because they don't have the ability to withdraw it unilaterally.
They probably can, but without, yeah, but it's with
Well-
prejudice. They requested it without prejudice, and I think we voted that way.
Right, and that's consistent with,
The vote.
and later on in the draft, my apologies, I missed it, but later on, we do point that out, that they made the request.
Anything else on first page? All right, moving on to the second.
A question, is there a final set of plans that we're working off of? I know that they revised some, and I see the initial plans were dated such. Do we identify what the final set of plans are that we had?
They did several different versions of it. In the later meetings, I just identified that they provided updated information. And then at the end, when we reference the name of the site plan, it's referenced all the way through their latest additions in March.
Okay, do we need to reference it, identify those plans by date or something? Or just, you say they keep on revising them?
Is there a last revised date on all of them? Or do we have to go through each sheet?
Well, as they submitted them, it did come in, like, they did a full set dated at the end of February, and then subsequently, they added some landscaping sheets, which I view as being part of the site plan, but they didn't resubmit the entire
Yeah.
set. But that went through mid-March, I
Yeah,
believe.
so,
I mean, I could go back and update these to acknowledge when they submitted, updated, and call out the plan.
I guess we could do the set, we could do the plan set with the final revision date of
Right.
February, in addition to, and then list the landscaping sheets and their final revision date of March.
Okay.
That's probably the only way we can do it if the plans were, if the dates are staggered.
This is a minor thing, but on point number 3 on page 2, on the first line, it shows should be show, just in terms of grammar nerdness.
Do I have to go back, because I was just
Yeah, no,
writing
I've got
that.
it, so when you're ready for it, I'll show you.
Okay, just want to get that.
Page 2, bullet.
Number
item
3, first
3.
line,
This should be show, singular.
Okay,
plans show.
Okay.
great.
Anything else on page 2?
Just in format and process, we raise notes of a lot of questions we've raised and the abutters have raised. Do we provide the answers that were given to those questions, or we just list the questions that have been raised? Impacts of mosquito breeding, abutters' home values, can we just leave them as just the questions that were raised, or do we have to come back with some of those responses, or is that not needed at this point?
Well, I think we get into the responses that matter further in with regard to, for example, noise panels, inverter, decibel sounds, the removal costs we get into, all of those things. I think it's more important that we bring up the fact that the planning board brought these issues up.
Okay.
It'd be tough to recapture.
It would be.
I mean, that's
impossible.
hours and hours of dialogue.
Correct.
So,
And
which I mean, the intent is not to make it verbatim here.
And
This is a
yeah.
recap.
Unfortunately, we're dealing with a a decision where technically the hearings didn't end to the satisfaction of the board, because the board asked for a continuance for further information. So this board didn't get finality in all of its issues. Its issues were not resolved because of the fact that we asked for a continuance and we didn't receive a continuance with further information.
And although, again, for the later meetings, I'll have to go back and look at the structure of questions, comments, and make it consistent with that.
Any other comments or corrections to page 2? Moving on to 3.
So I just had a few things here that I can work with Paul with regarding, we have, towards the bottom third of the page, it says necessity of peer review, question mark. We would just change that to discussion regarding the necessity of a peer review. Just wording things, just so there's no question marks.
And the one further up in that section?
I just would take out
Yeah,
that question
yeah,
mark, because
right,
it's a
yeah.
statement, yeah.
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 Just a typo up under the board raised the following questions, 1, 2, 3, fourth dot down, it should be shown, being shown on, as opposed to show.
Sorry, where are you?
The paragraph start, but right above 6.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah.
2 up
Got it.
from 6, explanation
Not
as to the
being
panels.
shown.
Not being
Shown.
shown.
Yeah.
And then I was not at the February 28th meeting, but did the purchase price of land should be renegotiated to scale back the project size? Was that brought up?
That was raised
It was raised.
by an
initially.
abutter
Right.
Yep.
as
Okay,
a
right.
okay,
discussion about the size of the project.
okay. Was there any response that clearly is not within the purview of the planning board? Because we should probably state that if there was that response.
I think it was largely ignored by us
Okay.
because we knew that.
As long as we-
knew
as
the
long as-
applicant wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it does state that counsel for abutters brought it up because it has nothing to do with your purview, so,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Yep. On the, well, I'll say the third bullet in, kind of above what Orin said, where we talked about the change in the number of panels. The change caused a reduction from 8.9 megawatts to 8. Was that 8.7 at that point?
I thought it was 8.4. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think there were several. We
There
went
were a
back and
couple,
looked.
right? We went like a little,
I think ultimately they ended at 8.7, but I
They did.
believe at
Yeah,
that meeting it was
one point,
8.
and
comes in the
8.7,
next page,
yeah.
okay, Orin, yeah. I know we
Yeah.
kind of fluctuated as we were talking about the number
Right.
of panels, okay.
But I believe they said 8 that, I'm
Yeah.
confident they said
Okay.
8 that night, then the next meeting.
He
And
did
then-
give us the exact number of the panels afterward. I don't
Right,
think-
afterwards.
The next,
Later-
I had
later
asked-
meetings,
Yes, in the,
We got the email.
yeah, on the next page, on page 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's good then. As long as we end at the right number in megawatts, I think that's good,
Yeah, there it is.
right, to document where we landed in the final.
Right, I didn't think we dropped it, or they dropped it to 8 megawatts, and I'm wondering, unless we have a specific number, if we could just reference or say the change caused a reduction from the proposed 8.9 megawatts without identifying
What the number
what it
was.
was.
Yeah, I mean, unless we had
It wasn't 8.
Unless it was in the minutes that we documented it and approved the minutes, then I would take that.
From what I recall.
Had everybody's
The
agreement.
applicant said that it was an error in math on their part in like that period of that meeting, where they hadn't quite calculated it correctly, and then they'd come back to us with the correct number at the following meeting.
I know they didn't have, he didn't have the exact number of panels, and they didn't have the exact megawattage at this meeting, but did the following meeting.
Okay, so then, yeah, that's a good recommended change then.
Anything else on page 3? again, the question marks, you're going to change the
Yeah.
statements?
I'll change all that.
Yes.
Page 4.
I had written myself a little note, I think it falls under this February 28th, but I think that was the meeting where I asked about the property values and just explained that the examples provided were from the Midwest. I don't know if that's worthy of a bullet, but
Which meeting, Julie?
I think it was, I should say it's like under number, it's like half of 3 and this top of 4. I think it was that February 28th meeting when we talked about the property value examples that were from the Midwest.
Did we just approve those minutes?
Are they in the minutes?
No, we didn't approve tonight, we didn't approve those that far back.
Okay.
Yeah, unless someone has those handy.
I think that'd be just something that'd be good to know in whatever meeting it was in. I think it was that one.
Okay. I'll check. I'll check the dates.
It definitely was the first one where they provided the screening. So that's what made me think it was that one, because I had made comments on the screening was only to the first floor. And I think it was at that same meeting that I had made a comment about the property values, and we had talked about if there were any examples, and they just had those ones from, I want to say it was Indiana or Illinois, someplace like
Right,
that.
they were from Illinois, I
Yeah,
believe.
yep,
Okay, I'll check.
okay.
So under 7, it's just notify, should be notified.
Did you see that?
I'm looking to,
The first sentence of, first line of number 7.
7, this is,
notify, okay, right, sorry. Notified.
And then it should be review, not reviews. Review what they believe, the third line.
Okay.
anything else on page 4? Page 5.
I had to edit to the number 9 sentence. It didn't happen, I believe, because the applicant was concerned about the abutters recording the meeting, not the abutter was concerned.
Yeah, I have the
Right.
same note.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's a big
yep, look at,
mistake.
me and Orin wrote the exact same thing.
It
My
must be
apologies
there.
there.
Yeah, maybe just about the abutters, parentheses, what was the word? About the abutters' intent to record the meeting.
In the middle of the page, right in the middle of that paragraph, special permit.
Above number 9.
Yeah, above number 9. Special permit is, it is currently considered, it says mute, but it's supposed to say moot. M-O-O-T.
Oh, okay.
See it?
Moot.
Oot.
Okay. Looked good to me.
Right, the special permit does not actually
A lot
speak,
of
so it was correct.
A lot of people get that one wrong.
Oh.
very last, maybe just to clean it up a little bit, this is what we talked about earlier. After the planning board made a motion to continue the item to April 9th, the applicant requested, insert the word "that," the planning board close the public hearing and allow them to withdraw without prejudice the special permit application.
Requested that the planning board close the public hearing.
And allow them to withdraw without prejudice the special permit application.
Okay.
Under the section above, the planning board raises the following questions and comments. Members, I'm not sure that should be an apostrophe S. Again, minor stuff, but
Oh,
I don't believe it should be. Members collective.
I have just a general question. I don't know whether it would help us in terms of this decision to reference section 4.6 of the bylaws that says any use which would be harmful, detrimental, offensive, and would tend to reduce property values in the district where it's located by reason of an array of things, including noise, vibration, air and water quality, or any other reason, is hereby prohibited and may, whether or not enumerated around the uses otherwise permitted in any district. Is that something that would be of use in terms of this decision?
Probably when we get to the
The basis.
area of the vote. We good with 5? Moving on to 6, and the very first thing should be motion to allow applicant to withdraw a special permit application.
okay.
Do we
Should-
include this record of vote, because
The false
my
start.
fault,
I wouldn't.
Okay.
the motion originally was in the negative, so we corrected that because there was some confusion as to
Right.
what the outcome was. So I think this whole thing
Come out?
gets eliminated because we corrected our action.
Just the
I don't wanna
motion
say
to
correct-
deny,
Yeah.
Yeah,
just that one.
right.
Yeah, that
Okay.
would be the most.
I was very busy in this.
But keep the motion to
Motion
approve,
to approve, which fails, right.
which failed.
That's fine, it's in the minutes.
Fine, meaning.
It's fine to take it out because it's in the
Yeah,
minutes.
to take it out,
Yep.
right, okay, just to clarify, yeah.
Yep.
That's what I thought you meant, yeah.
Okay. So we'll keep the vote on the site plan and the vote on the special permit, to approve the special permit.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the site plan criteria, at least for me, it was important that what I based my feeling on it as it pertained to the site plan was the language under purpose, the very last sentence, and that the proposed development is in harmony with the existing neighborhood character and protects against adverse impacts to adjoining landowners. I mean, that to me was central in terms of how I voted on the site plan. And I think that, as it pertains to the site plan, was the most obvious problem with the proposal. That clearly, again, in my opinion, was not in harmony with the existing neighborhood character. So,
And that's
to me,
15.1.
that's 15.1. Somehow putting that language in, I think, is important.
So that language is in, on page 7 at the end for site plan, but the way that I put that, the way that I took that from you was that I wrote, "The planning board determined that without a peer review and plan revisions as requested, the proposed development is not in harmony with the existing neighborhood character and does not protect against adverse impacts to adjoining landowners." So is the first clause correct, or should we delete that first clause?
I mean, I think by putting in that without a peer review, the response is, okay, we'll do a peer review. I don't know how a peer review can change the impact of the proposal on the character of the neighborhood. So I don't know, I mean, speaking for myself, I don't know how other people base their vote, but I voted against the approval of the site plan because I felt it was not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
So take out that first clause.
Personally, I would, because, does the applicant then say, we'll remedy that, we'll have a peer review and,
But it also
Yeah.
specifies plan revisions as requested, so it's not the only box to check in a simplified manner.
Right, so by plan revisions as requested would be to reduce the size of the installation. I think it was clear that the board wanted it reduced. Keep in mind that this is an as-of-right use.
yeah, I mean, I'm a bit concerned with the strength of a site plan denial, but given the fact that that's the way we voted, at least for my purposes, I wanted to document how I felt this did not comply with the site plan process. Whether it's defendable or not, I don't know, but
So would we, recognizing, Amy, you've put that language on page 7, should we consider adding 15.1 right under site plan criteria, and then, so we would add 15.1 and then add 15.6, which are the...
Yeah.
15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, to add it into
Addition,
there,
15.
yeah, I mean, I don't know they have to have all of 15.1, but
I think the whole thing would be
It's helpful
wrong.
for reading the decision in context.
So going back on the same page, on 7, special permit, it says that the following, upon motion duly made and second voted to deny a special permit, we're actually changing that to approve, right? Oh, that's for
No.
tonight. Okay, so
Right.
we took it out of the first, okay, got it.
Yes.
Got it, okay. And we will vote in the affirmative tonight, so that should be changed.
Have we made a decision on this, the addition under site plan on page 7, that do we want to remove without a peer review? So that the planning board determined that the plan revisions as requested, the proposed development is not in harmony?
to me, I just, the planning board determined that
that the
proposed
proposed development is not in
Right.
harmony. I don't think
We
you need
cross
any other
out
without a.
without a peer review and
plan
plan revisions
requested.
requested.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
And then on the previous page, we'll put all of 15.1.
Right.
Purpose ahead of site plan criteria, since works.
On 7, under the special permit, my understanding was that A through E were part of section 10 and not section 13. Am I,
That's what I'm checking right now, actually, because I think, I agree with you, I think that's my
because that was
understanding too,
why I think
yeah,
me personally
right.
voted in favor
Yeah.
of,
right. Because
um,
13 doesn't have really anything,
no.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, 13 has a couple of criteria
Right.
Which are
specific to
listed there.
floodplain.
yeah.
But they're-
I had left that, I wasn't sure on the A through E, but right, so section 10.
That was my understanding, that we were only evaluating the special permit under the conditions of section 13 and not section 10.
That is correct, because they withdrew their special permit.
Well, they withdrew the special permit for Article 22 on the large scale.
Right.
Right. So under 13, 13 does not relate back to section 10, so it would only be reviewed under section 10. I mean, under section 13, I'm sorry.
Which would include just points currently labeled F and G.
It would be F and G.
Yes. Which are 13.4C, special permit uses. Subject to the following limitations, so. And it doesn't apply, neither one of these apply.
This may be something later to look at the special permits, because
Oh, yeah, I know.
I'm not sure what in our code references back to section 10.
Okay.
Because even when we talk about a building 10,000 square feet or more, I don't, I'll have to look at that.
Question, Joe, where did we eliminate the peer review?
I'm sorry?
We took out the words peer review. Where is that on the?
Bottom of page 7.
It's in the underlined
And the
portion.
underlined portion there at the bottom.
There,
Frank,
thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, so just that I'm caught up here, what are we doing with special permit criteria, Article 13, Section 4C, that stays in?
Right. But we
But you're
removed
losing A through E below that,
items.
because it's not part of 13.
Right.
So Paul, so the way that this bylaw is written, if 13.4C, 1 or 2, if that was applicable, then you would have to go back to the section 10 standards to see if it meets the standards of section 10, but they're not applicable is the problem that we have
Okay.
here.
You said 13,
Doesn't
So
it
it's
say-
up, it's page 175 colon 66.
okay.
And it's, so, it says, no permit shall be issued to fill or excavate the floodway or to build a new structure. So
Right.
That doesn't, that's not happening. And then number 2 is not happening either because they're not filling.
Right.
So because neither one of those are applicable,
No, okay.
it meets the limitations.
Isn't section 10 applicable in all cases? It establishes the timing
It's a,
and everything else. You can't ignore that section 10.
no, but section 10.10, the standards only apply if the actual provisions of the special permit apply, and they don't apply here.
Well, if you're looking at, that's 13?
Uh-huh.
The language in 13 is not, I don't think restricted. 13, is it? Yeah, it says, it may grant it, provided that the building is subject to the following limitations.
Right.
It doesn't say it shall, it says it may, but if we do it, it has to be subject to those limitations.
Right, but you guys chose not to do it. So that was the whole point.
Right, but why doesn't 10, why can't 10
Because you
apply?
didn't go through any of that. You can't put it in the decision now if you didn't go through with it during the hearings. If you didn't go through all the criteria because it was denied. The criteria has to be met if you're approving it.
Okay,
Massachusetts case law states that a denial does not even need findings.
okay.
So that.
And it's my recollection, you guys did not actually go through it, so we can't put it in the decision now.
On the floodplain
Right.
issue, yeah.
Yeah.
So, maybe under the special permit, then, are we including criteria? Because 10's out.
I mean, I don't think you need to, because it doesn't, the special permit uses, it doesn't really matter, because they're not, physically, they don't meet these two things. You didn't have to evaluate those two things, and then you didn't evaluate it because it was denied. So
So
I
would you
think
just
it's
say
more
that the
important
board voted?
I think it's more important the findings that we've made, the 6 pages of findings rather than the
Yeah.
criteria are much more important.
I would agree.
Okay,
I would take out A through G.
and, okay,
It was denied, it was denied based on the findings.
So do you even reference the section 13.4?
You know what,
See
the only
there?
reason I would is because, I wouldn't reference C, I would just reference section 13, only because there are so many special permits floating around for a little bit there. There was the one under large scale, there was this, and there was the question whether they had to do the water resource protection one. So there was a lot of,
well, under the general findings, we do reference they applied for this permit.
yeah, right.
So do we need to make a reference here again under the special permit criteria?
You should put floodplain somewhere in there, because what we have is deny a special permit for construction of a large-scale ground-mounted solar facility, and then either you keep subject to section 13, or you put pursuant to the floodplain, because right now it sounds like, if you took that out, it would sound like you're denying it because it's a solar, and that's not why, you're denying
Yeah.
it because it's in floodplain.
I'll just put back the subject to,
Yeah, just-
pursuant to,
Yeah,
section.
yeah.
We're just referencing section 13? Or
Yeah.
anything-
Yeah, just 13,
Just section
right?
13.
And then finish based upon the findings,
Right.
based upon the findings,
Based upon the board's findings.
okay. So up above, on page 7, right under where it says special permit criteria, it lays out what Article 13, Section 4 states. Am I keeping that? Are we keeping?
Take that out.
Take it out?
Yeah, good catch.
The language we have now is voted to deny, and yes, no, is the yes a denial, is the no a denial? How we, the vote itself?
That's what I just brought up earlier. I don't know if you guys want to vote in the affirmative or the negative. It's up to Joe, I
Well,
guess,
mean,
as the chair.
Haven't we already dealt with that issue on page 6?
So I think this would be just to approve the decision,
Tonight?
yeah.
Okay, so we're not,
So-
does this-
Approving our previous approval.
Yeah.
Or
It's easier to do
Or
it in
not.
the approval in the affirmative versus.
Yeah, when we get to that, but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be special permit, should be special permit decision, if we're gonna vote on it, because we've already voted on the special permit.
Right. We're just voting.
So
on this.
I don't want to confuse the issue by saying, you know, on page 6, we're talking about action on the special permit, yet on page 7, as it's presented here, what we're going, the only unfinished piece of business, at least from us, is to vote on this decision. So should this say special permit decision and then
Then the vote.
the vote? And again, it should be in the,
And then site plan decision as well.
Yeah, because we listed the vote on the special permit already.
right.
Okay.
So what we're going to be voting on, and again, voting on the affirmative, and we could all vote yes, if that's people's pleasure, is this document is corrected, not, if you want to deny the special permit, that's not what, that's
Yeah,
not
we're
going to
not
take care.
voting on that.
So I just want to make sure that people are clear that they don't want to vote against this document. They want to vote yes if you're in agreement with this document is corrected.
You're voting as an accurate representation of our decision.
Right.
So to be clear, the two voting sections within the final 2 pages of special permit and site plan, those
Right.
do not need to be included here, or do they?
Well, we ought to, whether
Page
it's
7 and
here,
page
or
8.
we've got to vote on. this
Yeah, we're voting on
document.
the document. Does that become part of the document? Our approval of the document?
Those are being removed, right?
I don't think you have to.
Yeah,
I think
right.
It's just in the minutes.
It's just in the minutes, right? But, yeah, so these sections would be removed, right?
7 and 8 would be gone.
Yeah,
So we have to move somewhere, we have to put this site plan provision into the document. At the bottom of page 7, that has to be incorporated into the document.
So that kind of moves maybe to the bottom of page 6, where you were making that note, Joe, about 15.1.
Yeah, I think so.
15.6, right?
Yeah, to reference
Yeah.
those sections.
Yeah. I would move it there.
right, to keep it,
Wait, I'm sorry. Can we restate that? What's moving?
Bottom of page 7 is moving to the bottom of page 6.
the site plan section.
That paragraph where Joe has made the determination. It's not in harmony with the existing neighborhood character and does not protect against adverse impacts to adjoining landowners. That whole paragraph has to go into the decision somewhere. So we think it should go at the bottom of page 6.
Okay, I see. Because we'll add the language from 15.1, and then this will move. Okay.
Will that move the vote for it too, on page 8?
Yeah, page 8
Yeah,
is gone
that's gonna
too.
be removed, yeah.
So all of everything's under site plan decision moves to under site plan criteria.
Right, but the language, I think,
Sleep for this level of.
we're not going to reference the following members of the Norton Planning Board on a motion.
Right.
That's going to go,
So then it just goes, the planning board determined that the proposed development is not in harmony.
yeah.
The first sentence is gone.
Yeah.
I lost you guys.
Oh, right here, Orin, so instead of us repeating the table, we're gonna take that out, and therefore you'd have to just take out this reference in the first line.
And then the voting, then the recording of the voting comes right under that then.
Trying to decipher these minutes.
Okay.
There is no recording of the voting of the approving this
No,
decision.
For either the site plan or the special permit?
The vote was taken at the meeting on the 9th,
Okay.
or no, the 2nd?
The second.
The second.
So we can just eliminate the voting roll call, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Which technically, the voting,
But there was a vote on the site plan.
Yeah, it's just
2
not
weeks
in
ago.
the clock, it was unanimous, so it's just in the text, Joe,
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
It's in the
for the
findings.
site plan.
okay.
So then, if we do that, then if we're getting rid of the vote, then under special permit decision, then we need to I'll need to revise that to say, instead of starting with the following members of the Norton Planning Board, it'll just be the Norton Planning Board upon motion duly made and seconded.
Where are you reading?
That's after we vote, though, yeah.
Well, no, we're going to eliminate this from the findings and decision.
Right.
It's going to be in the minutes. So this is all going.
Okay, the whole section.
Right.
Yeah, so that section, record of vote, that doesn't need to be included here.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause that's
Yeah.
already-
Yeah.
Everything
that's
from
already-
record
yeah,
of
right,
vote,
that all
actually,
goes.
everything under
Special permit criteria.
is gone, because
Yeah.
the stuff down at site plan
Yeah,
is
that's getting
moved over.
moved, and everything
Yep.
else will be eliminated.
We all on the same page on that? I just,
Mm-hmm.
are you good?
Yeah, so it looks like the decision on the special permit really, it's just covered in the findings of fact from the vote taken on April 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we keep the site plan as we've talked about,
Right.
but eliminating under site plan, the roll call
Right.
record. Okay, got it.
Should the final sentence precede the first sentence?
I'm sorry, Warren,
Under site plan, should that final sentence precede that first sentence?
Oh, like,
The-
we
the
found it
first-
to be
We
not in
determined
harmony.
We determined it to be X, Y, and Z, then we voted to deny it, as opposed to denying it and then make a determination. Just,
I'm not sure I'm following you.
the last sentence says we've
The
determined.
last sentence where, on page 7?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, the planning board determined that,
the proposal
Proposed
is not in
development.
harmony with the existing, and then the vote that we denied it. Should the determination come before the vote to deny it, or after?
It should be after the vote, right? It would make more sense to come after the vote as the reason for denial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that it matters.
it's, I thought we were moving it to page 6 anyway, so.
we are at the bottom
Yeah.
of
Oh,
page
but
6.
vote
He's just
came
talking about the
before.
wording
of the
Oh, I-
paragraph.
Just
I
the-
don't
the
think it
paragraph
matters,
wording.
it's in the decision.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's somewhere in there.
I was just going to put it after the site plan criteria.
Actually, just so that numerically, probably ought to go first, because that's purpose, we were going to put the whole thing in there. That's 15.1
Yeah.
purpose, and then 15.6, so just sequentially.
Right, it's 15.1, then 15.6, but then you want this sentence to go in front of 15.1?
No, I thought we were going to put the planning board determined, we put that language after 15.1 and 15.6. The planning board determined that wasn't in harmony.
Right.
And the
Right.
planning board
That-
also determined that it wasn't in conformance or didn't comply with 15.6.
Okay, that's what I,
So that's what I thought you were going to do.
yeah,
We'll cite 15.1, 15.6, and then state that it's, not in compliance, for lack of a better word, well, it's not in harmony with 15.1, and it's not in compliance with 15.6. People okay with that?
Got it.
Okay, so then, that completes the document. Is there a motion to approve the findings and decision document as amended tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion, further discussion? Again, what we're doing is voting on this with its changes. There's been a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous, but that's in the minutes.
Yes,
Okay.
right.
Right.
All right, so that's out of the way. And the last item on,
So Paul, that decision will be dated today, 4/16.
Okay.
For approval of
The decision's
that,
dated
yes,
today.
that's dated today. The actual approvals remain.
No, they're all dated today.
All dated
No,
today.
we're out 14 days, so
So,
we want, this is the
Yeah.
final act of the board. Well,
Okay.
actually, I guess the final act is filing with the town clerk.
yeah,
This is your final agreement on the project.
okay.
how do I feel it's not the final?
That's not up to me.
This for Steve, though. And Frank. All right, last item on the agenda, special town meeting tomorrow night. What we wanted to do is, the board is on record as recommending, for lack of a better title, the petitions article. But there was some concern as to whether complete elimination of, or a complete agreement with the petition article would potentially wipe out as of right citing as it pertains to commercial and industrial, and whether that would impact our ability to qualify under the Green Communities Act. So I'll let you inform the board as to what your conversation with DOER was.
I spoke with Seth Pickering late this afternoon, and the good news is, because with the changes being proposed, would still allow site plan approval only for large-scale facilities within commercial and industrial. The fact, if we're deleting a definition for as of right, they don't have an issue with it. So they'll be fine with those changes as proposed.
Okay.
So that, for purposes of protecting our concern, we need not take any action. Am I summarizing?
Correct, on the as of right definition.
Well,
And
the petition does four things.
correct.
So it does not affect, as petitioned, does not affect commercial and industrial. You had said something about large-scale.
The only other condition that we would like to see kept is the provision that's currently, we talked about this last week, it's the E.
Yeah, the one that you were concerned with, Steve.
Smaller scale.
Yeah, anything
Small
under,
scale.
it's not an as of right, well, I guess technically it is, but it's just identifying, previously, the bylaw was silent about anything less than large scale. And we defined large scale as anything bigger than 250 kilowatts. But it said nothing about, the bylaw said nothing about what do we do if it's less than that. So we just added this provision, we had added this provision, E, to talk about what happens when we get them, and primarily it goes through the building commissioner. We would prefer that that stays in. It doesn't affect
the issues we've heard along about the Cranberry Bog, this is really a separate issue from that, so this could affect anyone coming in from a very small facility to one that still doesn't qualify as or meets the threshold as a large scale.
Right, and it was our understanding last week that we were not in a position or able to make any changes. We were reviewing the collective body of the recommendation as opposed to line item.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, no, because we can, as a board, we're on record as recommending passage of the special town meeting petitioned article as printed. But that's not to say we as a board can't move to amend it. We can do it as individuals, or we can do it as a board.
You're saying at town meeting tomorrow, Joe?
Tonight, because
Or tonight.
we can't say that the planning board moves to recommend unless amending such and such, unless the board votes on that tonight.
Okay.
But I'm not saying we have to, we could do it as individuals. I'm still trying to see how best to
Mr.
do that.
Chairman?
Yes.
Just wanted to point out from the last time we met that we were willing to discuss with the board what floor amendments should be made that would take into account that small scale. That would take into account that small scale solar issue. So if you'd like that to be an amendment made on the floor, that's fine. We're willing to do that.
Okay, I mean, just procedurally, I don't know best to, whether as you move it, well, let's, before nailing down who should move it, let's have a discussion on the topic and whether it's easier for you as the motioner to move it. In other words, when you read this, I move that we do such and such, you could also add other language in your motion, notwithstanding the fact it's not part of your original petition, correct?
Correct, provided it's within the scope.
Within the scope, and I'd like to think that since they're taking.
Could I just get a clarification from you, Mr. Chairman? Are we looking, is it just that, are we just looking to not delete E?
No, because I think they want to eliminate E.
Oh,
That was
That
my
was-
contention.
that was
That was
the
the whole
original-
contention, I thought.
Right, because.
Recommendation was
E-
to delete E. There was some discussion of, if anything, that would actually make sense to keep.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So if the change, the amendment to be made is simply that E will no longer be deleted, that would clearly be within the scope and could be done through a motion.
But I think that's the heart of their proposals. They want to eliminate E.
No,
No.
no.
Hold on, let me, because I've got so many
Hold on,
versions
hold
of it.
on. Joe's gotta get on the right version.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, so what we were trying to do is obviously just reverse everything in our haste. I agree that we were a little hasty in doing it. So E is now the language on the small scale.
Right.
Which is, and so if you look at the petition that we filed, it's item 3, basically saying that to delete your new E, which is the small scale, and put E back to what it used to be. But we're okay with not doing that anymore. So what I think Joe was suggesting is that somebody make a motion, whether it's one of our butters or you, it doesn't matter, make a motion to amend this petition to essentially delete item 3 in the petition. Because then if we.
No, you don't wanna do that.
Does it have to
Well-
be more specific in terms
But
of?
there's other, we have other motions that cover me.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
so you're gonna add them, you're gonna add.
Well, yes, exactly. And so, and that's the other thing, is to kind of put it back in. I think it'd be more appropriate under, frankly, the end, 22.3.A, where it talks about the designated locations. It would seem to me that would probably be and that's where you added in all of the ASTGU language. Obviously, our petition currently is going to strike all of that, but I think we should probably go a step further and add language in there to say that it is, the current language that it's allowed on no less than 2 acres within commercial and industrial, but that large scales would not be allowed in residential districts. Obviously, I'm not saying it in its full legalese, I'm just summarizing it.
You had proposed it to be with a special permit, though. Are you proposing?
Well, that's another issue, and I guess something for discussion, maybe we can talk about that now, is whether or not it would be prohibited entirely within residential districts, or only allowed by special permit in residential districts.
I'm sorry, are you asking, is this for tomorrow or for future?
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Because that's not what you
Yeah.
requested.
right. I think.
Correct,
But you could have, okay.
correct.
If I were the-
We're almost changing the entire petition, maybe via floor amendments.
Which is
Within the
exactly
scope.
out of the scope.
Yeah.
There's no way, don't
What-
say that on town meeting floor. You can't change the entire petition on town meeting floor, that would be out of the scope.
We're changing the wording of the scope is still the same.
But now you're eliminating the ability to cite these facilities in the residential, 2 of the residential districts, which you didn't ask for on this.
Sure, but it's still in the scope, it's still talking about siting of large scale in,
No,
Yeah.
the scope of the article, if you were to do if you did a delete and replace, then perhaps that would be in the scope, but the scope of this article is extremely limited. It's limited to, on attachment A, it's limited to deleting as of right citing. It's limited to deleting the last sentence of D, and then deleting and replacing E, and then the big one, which is the 22.3, deleting the second half of that. That's it.
so, well, let me ask you this, taking item 1, for example, which is deleting the definition of as of right citing. I was initially thinking I was prepared to have someone make a motion to put that back in, you just clarified that may not be necessary, but let's assume for the moment it still is and the town wants it. If we delete item 1 or make a motion on the floor to delete item 1 in the article and replace it with a new item 1, which basically puts the as of right back in, well, I guess we wouldn't even need to because it's already in, but maybe with
It's
some,
already in.
which maybe some other wording changes, why would that be out of the scope? It's still dealing with the as of right issue. I mean, I'm just using that as an
That's
example.
not out of the scope.
Okay, I thought you said
It's
that.
already in there.
I thought you said that was out of the
No,
scope.
you're saying that you're planning on prohibiting certain things in certain districts and everything like that. That's not in the scope at all. Right now, all you have in the scope is deleting as of right citing, deleting the following, as of right citing development may proceed, blah, blah, blah. And then you're replacing E, you're deleting E and replacing it.
Well,
And then you're
yes.
and then you're
To put in
deleting.
to say that
second half.
it's required as a special permit.
Yeah, and then,
Okay.
right, you're replacing it with that provision. And then the last one, 22.3A, the second half. So there's nothing here about prohibiting it anywhere. It's a special
Correct.
permit.
In the article as currently drafted, you're right, there's nothing there about prohibiting it. But, so take item 3, for example, where we're going to delete the current E, which is the stuff you want, and we agree we should keep that in there on the small scale. So what if we take item 3, keep the language that we are suggesting about being, but also putting back into the smaller scale and somehow rewording that. So instead of saying delete the current text of E, we could say add to the current text of E.
Right.
That's fine.
Now, let me take that one step further. So we would say, all right, so we're going to move on the floor to amend item 3 to say, instead of saying delete, we were going to say add, and now say, but instead of adding that it's a special permit, it would simply adding language saying that it is prohibited in residential districts. Are you thinking that would be out of the scope?
Is that by this board, so we'll take it this way, by this board recommending this article, is that what you meant to recommend? I mean, it seems a lot different.
Okay, no, I'm just asking.
It seems
Well,
completely different.
I think it feels different. I think from your perspective, looking at it from a it may feel within the scope almost as a continuum of being allowed as of right to being completely prohibited. And you've kind of moved it a notch
Sure,
to this
yeah,
way, and you're just
exactly.
going one step further.
Exactly.
Can
I
can
think, to your point, yeah, I don't think we would
Well,
be behind it at that point.
that's two separate things, I guess. Whether or not you're behind it and whether or not I can legally present it, I think are two separate issues.
Can I just suggest some language?
Yes.
To the extent that you can stay as close to this as possible, would prevent some confusion, so that under item 3, it read in section 175-22-2.e, add to the current text a new section F as follows, and then put your language in here.
For special, for,
You mean,
And we have to
we-
say, and renumber.
And renumber.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
well, you don't have to renumber anything.
Well, there was an existing F.
Well, you have an F and a
Oh, I'm
G, so
sorry,
you might
okay.
create a new H.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
could create
Well-
an H
yeah.
if you want to put E back in, but semantics.
There's an H,
Oh, there's an H.
there's an I, there's a J,
there's
there's a
an A.
K.
Yeah.
You go all the way down to K.
Sorry.
It goes to K.
Goes to
Yeah.
K.
So what I think you're suggesting would then say, move that item 3 be revised to say that add in 22-E the following new L, I think would be the next letter on the alphabet.
No, it would just be, you don't want to reference E at all.
I know, I'm not, yeah, I didn't there.
You said E,
I
add
said
in L.
22-2, add to the end of that a
That's
new
not what
L.
you said. You said E.
Okay, sorry, I
This
meant,
isn't, number 3 isn't the issue. Number 3 is easy. That can easily be done.
well,
It's the fact that you're changing, you're adding, your new L is not going to say special permit anymore. It's going to say prohibited, large
well,
scale.
that's what we're discussing at the
Right.
moment.
That's what you're, right. So
I'm
that's
sug-
what you're proposing.
I'm,
right?
I'm kind of throwing it out there and seeing how, if it's going to fall flat. And obviously, this is just the planning board, this isn't the town meeting voters.
Just the planning board.
Well, no, with all due,
Well, the
no
planning board-
disrespect meant.
The planning board is required under Section 5 to make a recommendation, so
course.
they need to know what they're recommending.
Sure.
However, whether it's in the scope or not is up to the moderator. It has nothing to do with
Yeah,
these
exact-
guys. But the scope of their recommendation has to be clear.
That's a big,
Yes.
that's a
So
big
you
change
guys
from
can-
last week.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's a
that's
really
what
big
I meant. You guys have to know
Right.
exactly what you're recommending and what you're not.
Well,
Whether it can happen on town meeting floor is up to the moderator. That's clear.
okay, so
Well,
I,
based on our conversation last week, we agreed because we voted on the entirety of these 4 changes, and that's how we were instructed to vote. I think some of us did have some pause about the deletion of the small scale. So I think, not to speak for the board, but for myself, if that were to be added in, that was fine. Now, also, last week, it was we're gonna reverse, take a pause, and then reevaluate. So maybe some advice is to take that. You've
Sure.
gotten endorsement from 3 of the committees that I believe you were looking for endorsement from.
Yes.
It's been sold as a reversal.
yes,
So I would take that to heart.
Yes, no, I
When
know.
you go to town meeting and you
Yep.
make amendments on the floor, that can be confusing to the
Yes.
general public.
Yes.
So,
Let me,
word
yeah,
of be
let,
caution.
let me just say, I
Very well
agree, Julie. I think that what we had discussed was, and I know you're trying to do the best you can, I'm not knocking you, but I think that at this point, what we spoke about was the original proposed petition, which everybody endorsed, with the understanding that we were going to discuss as of right, which Paul was going to check on, and then we were going to deal with the small scale
Right.
issue.
Yep.
Beyond that, I just had one other question that there may be a way to address, or maybe there's not, because we also had the intent of working together to create a better bylaw for the town sometime in the fall, which was going to address a bunch of issues, which I wanted you to name. You listed a bunch of them last time. I'd like you to do that again. My question would be, let's assuming we go forward with the petition as it was put forth, we skip the as of right because that's not necessary, we address the small-scale solar issue. How do we deal with the fact that for a period of time until the fall, another firm other than Nexon could come into a residential area and propose a large-scale solar project? how do we deal with that? Is there another amendment that we could make that would somehow deal with that? Or do we just have to take the risk until the fall? Is there anything you can recommend based upon your experience in dealing with these types of things?
Well,
But in-
if this gets, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But in terms of large scale, the language presented would then require special permit by the planning board.
Right, but it doesn't take into account things like the AC/DC problem, batteries, all these other issues.
Noise and, other things.
Right, but that's not going to be handled.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
But
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand, okay, this gets moved and passed as it stands without changes. So smaller scaled ground and building mounted solar installations is no longer in our bylaw. So what? Isn't it now viewed as an accessory use? And if I want to put solar panels on my roof, I've been able to do it all along, just because it's not in here. Isn't that just an accessory use? My question is aimed at what happens is if this goes as presented and out the window goes this definition of solar, smaller scaled ground or.
Well,
Which
what
wasn't in
happens-
there prior to
Wasn't?
January as it is.
Right, so what's the downside?
Well, the downside is you just have a bylaw that's silent about these projects. It
Right.
doesn't prohibit, that was never our intention, it was just to bring out into the open, here's a process that we can point to as staff, that when this comes in, this is the process that goes.
Well, there is no process, because if I'm putting a small, even under this, if I'm putting a small-scale ground or building-mounted solar installation, it says, which is an accessory to an existing residential. I mean, the only thing it would be is if I want to sell it to the grid, but, the grid's not going to buy 250 kilowatts.
You still have to get the building permit, it doesn't
Yeah.
change,
So
it
my-
doesn't change anything, it's just, we just want to acknowledge that with these smaller scale, they could exist.
Well,
We
we
could
don't-
get projects in and.
I don't know, you do have a prohibitory bylaw, and your prohibitory bylaw actually goes a little bit further because it does state only the principal and accessory uses enumerated herein. And the uses necessarily or customarily incidental and accessory to such permitted principal uses shall be permitted. So I wouldn't say that solar panels on top of a house are, at this point in 2019, necessary.
But aren't they an accessory use?
But they're not listed. So if they were listed, we'd be okay, but they're not, because this is a prohibitory bylaw, it has to be listed somewhere to allow it.
So Amy, your feeling is that we should
Put it in.
keep.
I don't know why it was
former
removed in the
E
first
and-
place.
I don't know why it was removed either, because it doesn't, the old E and the new E don't relate at all.
It
I don't,
was,
so I don't
it was
understand.
simply removed to get something drafted, and we took everything you guys did and just reversed it.
Yeah, I think it was done very hastily.
Yeah, I
think,
know, believe me, just like the one back in November,
E that
in
was
November and
removed-
December were too,
Well,
it's,
All right, the section that was removed here for E, I mean, that
yeah,
could well have been, hold on, that could very well have been the reason that a lot of people voted this in the first place.
sure. So we're suggesting that we'll make a motion on the floor to put it back in.
Or who wants to make the motion?
It doesn't matter.
You should make the motion, because it's a petitioner's article, it's
That's
much
fine.
cleaner.
And so
Yeah, but is the motion now going to include?
no. Well, I can't say no, I need to
Just mentioned,
speak.
can I finish?
Sure.
Okay. Is the motion going to include not requiring a special permit? I mean, you changed the motion when you came here, so I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
The motion on the floor will certainly to be put back in the new, I'll call it the new E, dealing with small scale. And then, as for whether or not my clients, I need to speak with them, want to either A, take the old E, the special permit language, and make that, I guess, an L now. And that would, well, your town council shook her head there.
I would,
No, I'm just curious why, what was wrong with that? I thought you said earlier that was fine.
Is it better just to say and renumber or
yeah.
Yeah. Let's just.
Oh, okay.
Well, I just want to make sure we're on the same
Let's
page.
not worry about
because you had
what
said
land
prohibit.
we're
Okay,
So
I just wasn't
here.
sure, I wasn't sure what the problem, it's not shaking the head, so I just want to make sure, I wasn't sure what the issue.
Let's not
Or the alternative is, as well, we go a step further with the motion on the floor, and I don't know what they're gonna
I'll
want to
tell you
do.
what threw this all into chaos, is coming in and saying that we're going to change the language to prohibit. Because
I was
that's
just
not
throwing
anything- Hold on, please let me finish.
Sure.
Okay, this is starting to get a little, enough. You changed the language to prohibit when you came in here, so that's what we're trying to clarify here. okay? So if that's what you're intending to motion, is that we're going to prohibit it, then I personally am not going to get behind that. But, and I can't speak for the rest of the board. But if that's not the case, then we need to know that. I mean, I personally don't want to go into this not knowing what you're talking about.
Sure. My intent of bringing that up, and perhaps in a very inartful way, was to simply bring it up and see what the reaction was tonight. I never said we are definitely going to do that. I said we are thinking about doing that. The reaction has obviously been quite negative to that proposal. So my client will take that into consideration in terms of what they do tomorrow night. That's the best answer I can give you on that.
We adopted, and I don't know how Norton handles it, the general code. And I don't know if Norton adopted the ability for the, and I believe it did, for the town clerk and town manager
To
change.
renumber, yeah,
All right, so what if we
We did.
just let me hear this,
So that
put
the
this
town
line.
clerk renumbers.
Right,
Yeah.
let me just put this
Okay.
language out here and see if it works.
Please.
Leave everything the way it is, except that item 3 in section 175, this is how it should read. This is what I'm proposing it should read. Item 3 in section 175-22-2E, maintain the current text and add the following where appropriate, and then put special
That's
permit.
perfect.
So rather than delete,
Yep.
put the word maintain,
Maintain the current text and add the following where.
and add the following where appropriate. And then they can, the
Sure,
town
of
manager and
course.
clerk can put it in where it best.
Now, if I may, just again, kind of a more procedural question. In terms of the motion that would be made on the floor, would the motion be to delete item 3 in the article?
No.
And replace with the item 3?
You want to read this whole thing as your motion. In other words, Mr. Moderator, I move that the town of Norton vote to amend the zoning bylaws by making the following changes. You actually read them, and then when you get down to 175-22-2E, don't even read the word delete, maintain. So that is your motion. To me, that's still within the scope.
Oh, definitely.
Isn't the
No,
finance
but-
committee going to read that? Are they the ones who are going to do this?
But this is the article.
I
Doesn't
don't
someone
know.
need, doesn't there need to be, this is the article. There needs to be a motion to amend the article.
No.
It
You
becomes
You can amend it by a motion.
It be,
It's whatever the.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, a motion to amend the article.
Oh.
No?
Can we vote on a motion, or is this?
Amy has
To amend it, can we do it as a board, or does it have to be at the meeting for these changes?
In terms of modifying
Yeah.
the language.
I
that
just.
was
Yeah, because
I wanna get
I'm
to
not
a
sure
point
that-
where they
that that's the best
know
idea.
what they're
Yeah.
going to do, and
Yes.
once they know what they're going to do, we can figure
Well-
out what we're going to do in response, but
I guess the question I have is that we were presented with this specific language,
Right.
which we reviewed, discussed, and provided a recommendation on.
right.
So that's all we have done so far, and that's all we can make a recommendation on, because that's all that's officially been presented to
We
us.
can act tonight.
And we can recommend changes.
Oh, yeah, as long as we can do that, you know, if that, then that's fine.
Well, is the choice you're going through for us to recommend changes, or to wait for them to do it at town meeting?
I want to get to a point where, A, we eliminate as much of this confusion that we're having tonight,
Right.
tomorrow night,
On the floor.
and again, as I understand the process, if they actually move language that is slightly different than their original petition, they can do that. They're the petitioner. And I don't know if the finance committee is recommending it, are they the ones that are going to move it?
No, they can't. It's a petitioner's article.
Well, okay, well, they could move it as
So The
petition.
selectmen told me we don't
I
do
don't-
anything. The finance committee was going to present it.
Well, that's what we've got to find out, because whoever makes the motion, finance committee can't do anything different. They can.
Couldn't the finance committee present it, and then we stand up and say, we're going to make a motion to amend
You
the
could.
petition
You could.
That's.
with deleting 3 and adding
So,
3 instead?
so that's your second choice, because that creates confusion at town meeting. The first choice is Joe's suggestion of having it done through the motion. What I would suggest is that you show up at town meeting early with a revised motion, as Joe has stated, present it to the moderator.
You mean revised article?
No, motion.
Motion? Okay. A motion to do what?
No.
The motion, you have an article, but you have to move that article.
Oh, okay,
So you have to have a motion.
I get, okay, that's what I was looking for, a motion to do what? Motion to move the article, okay,
Your motion is your article.
yes.
How's that?
No, it's not.
Well, not anymore.
Right, the article is just an agenda item.
Yeah, no, I get it,
Okay, so, again, someone.
But a motion has
article
to
is
do
just
something.
Fair warning to the citizens, this is
Yep.
what's gonna be discussed.
Yep.
And as long as you're gonna discuss and act on anything within the scope, you're fine.
yes,
So, someone has to make a motion to
Yes.
to accomplish what it, and I assume that you folks are gonna make that motion.
yes,
And if you actually read, I move, the language is, as I
got it,
had
Yep.
suggested, then you're good.
yep.
You don't, no one has to make any amendments, no
Which
one.
will be essentially substituting.
Maintain the current, maintain the current text and add the following where appropriate.
So you want to
But it-
bring that to the attention, you want to bring that to the moderator. It's the
In writing.
moderator's meeting.
Yes.
So you want to bring that to the moderator beforehand, and you want to make sure that he's okay with it because it is a petitioned article.
Yep,
Joe, the
But at that point,
Right.
that
So
is not something we, as the
That's not
planning
something we
board,
endorsed. If
can
they,
recommend or.
I just
because
want
that's
to know
not
what it is that
yeah.
they're going to do.
Right. But the
We
the
can't offer an
issue-
opinion on that as a
The
board.
issue, which
Yeah,
is a
in a
minor
minute.
issue, but could be an issue, is that it's a petitioned article, and you might not be the movant. And so that's what you have to make sure. You have to make sure that if you're not going to be the ones moving it, if the finance committee is going to move it, that they have the ability to move it with the new
Which they'd be
motion.
willing to do because. the
I'm sure they would,
selectmen are
but it's the moderator's decision.
Yep.
He runs the whole meeting.
and worst comes to worst, you can always do a floor amendment if it doesn't get done.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, you just want to make clear that it doesn't say, everybody thinks that somebody else is going to move it and then it goes, it fails for lack of a motion, which is,
Yeah, I'm sure someone from my group will jump up
Hey.
and not let that happen.
yeah.
So now you need to,
Well, let's, I just want to make sure that we're all clear as to what
Yep.
you're going to do.
Yep.
You or the finance committee.
So it sounds like, number one, forgetting about the as of right, that's not necessary. And we're going to do what we just discussed regarding moving it for this new change to the petition. We'll speak to the moderator, attempt to do it ourselves. If not, we'll have to do it to the finance committee,
Yeah.
if he'll let them,
if he'll let us.
to let them
To let-
change a petitioner's article.
And if all else fails, move your article as
As
originally written, and we'll,
Do a floor motion.
someone will do,
Okay.
so that, again, from the board, the planning board's perspective, we're on record as having recommended this language
Right.
without changes. That's not to say we can't reconsider that recommendation and come up with a new recommendation, i.e. recommending the changed language. That's up to you. But if they're moving different language, and I'm looking at
Yeah,
Steve because you're
right.
gonna have to, because I'm gonna recuse myself, then
We
you've
don't
got a
have-
motion that you can't.
Right, we don't
you've
have
got a
the ability to
recommendation
give
that
a
you can't make.
recommendation on something we've not received. Right.
However, we can change, and obviously, Amy, you're going to hit me and correct me if I'm wrong. We can change that, we can revise that recommendation tonight by virtue of a vote, if that's the pleasure of the board. So that you can make a motion to recommend as moved, notwithstanding it's different than what's on the printed warrant. They're going to move something different.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay.
Personally, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. I would rather make the changes and vote on those. I mean,
Or make a recommendation.
a recommendation, recommended changes
Yeah,
here.
I mean, we
especially
can't
with
leave it
how
open
this went
to
tonight.
as moved, you know, we don't know what that
I
may
would
be.
never leave it open to as moved. That would be,
Well,
yeah.
with the understanding that what is going to be moved is this language.
Well,
So then it
we
wouldn't be
would-
as, I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, no, then we
601.
should make that recommendation part of our
It's completely different.
approval, if you will.
The planning board report could say that on April 9th, the planning board voted to recommend the article, the petitioned article as written. Subsequently, on April 16th, the petitioner presented an amendment to the petitioned article, of which the planning board voted to either recommend or not recommend the amendment. So therefore, if it does go to a floor amendment and there's a motion to amend and the motion to amend does not pass, and we're back to the regular as written petition, you still have a planning board report, because you still, back on the 9th, you recommended it. So you would have a two-step planning board report
Right,
to cover yourselves.
yeah.
But again, I do agree that you need to be recommending specific language, so whatever, I thought that Joe's language was good, so if that's what they're going with. So when it comes down to tomorrow night, when the motion is made, if the motion is not what this board voted on tonight, then there is no recommendation on that motion. Your only recommendation is on what was presented on April 9th,
Right.
which was the original language.
And Steve's report would just be, the motion is outside the scope of what,
The planning board considered.
Right.
I'm just fearful of confusion.
Because potentially there'll be 3 separate amendments tomorrow.
And
Hopefully there will be no amendments.
Well-
It can be done by motion.
But then, planning board can't recommend it.
The planning board
It's-
can recommend it if the language is agreed upon tonight.
Well, that's what I thought we've done.
Right, so did I. So that can be.
Yeah, it just needs to be moved and,
If it's moved that way, I think the concern is if it's not moved that way.
Right.
So
Right.
if it's moved that way, then the report can be a favorable report. If it's moved a different way with other language that
Then there's
changes it,
no
then there is no,
But that applies in all cases. I mean,
Exactly.
We assumed
Exactly.
that the language that we were originally dealing with was what was going to be moved, and we were prepared to recommend that. Now, that language could have been changed, and then the planning
Yeah.
board could not have made a recommendation supporting that changed language.
correct.
It appears that we have consensus, and again, I'm just trying to avoid this type of, discussion tomorrow night by getting a commitment that the petitioner, or the finance committee, if that's allowed, will move language that has at item 3 in section 175-22-2.e, maintain the current text and
add.
add the following where appropriate, and then continue reading the motion.
Right.
Now, I'm sensing from you that you've got and again, I'm not being argumentative, I just want to make sure that we're understanding where the issue is, that you have a problem with that, Steve.
If they are going to move it as you worded it, then I don't have as big a problem. I do have a major problem with what was worded as prohibitive. I mean, I think that is a major change that completely changed everything. And I can't speak for anyone else, but I mean, I voted no, but I would assume that it would change some other votes,
Just a question.
with that wording.
Clarification, Joe. You added the words "where appropriate." I'm not sure what you were what you intended by that language.
allowing the
Where
clerk
it's
to
slotted
renumber
within-
every letter
Okay.
as a
Just
number,
where
Add
it
where
might be,
appropriate, okay.
yeah.
rather than trying to figure out what letter it falls
Okay.
under and
Yeah.
all that.
So perhaps, if I may, I would like to make a motion to revise the planning board's recommendation of Tuesday, April 9th for the proposed petition as presented, and would include the following recommendation for item 3, to restate that item as follows in section 175-22-2.e, maintain the current text and add the following where appropriate: special permit, large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations located within residential 80 or residential 60 zoning district shall be allowed only upon grant of a special permit from the Norton Planning Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Can,
Am I allowed to vote on that, since it's a revision of a thing I wasn't here for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I make a suggestion? Rather than referencing revising the 4-9 decision, I think we have to endorse our 4-9 decision, but would support an amendment, we would endorse an amendment that included, instead of saying we're revising the 4-9 decision. That has to stand, because if they don't make that amendment, then we still want that 4-9 decision to stand. So rather than saying we're revising the 4-9 decision, we endorse the 4-9 decision. However, in the event of an amendment, we would endorse the amendment provided it stated such and such.
I think
No,
that,
I mean, I think we're fine by, yes, we're not changing our, our recommendation. We're, of moving this to town meeting, but we are making a recommendation, adding a recommendation as part of that
Right.
to modify the language of that item.
do you have that, Paul?
Yeah.
In terms of the minutes?
Well-
Amy, does that work?
It does.
Okay.
It's,
Well, I assume we have to provide a report tomorrow, do we not?
Well, what happened,
it's just a,
Yeah, that would just be, it would have to include that language.
A report?
Yeah.
Right, so I could modify
Right.
the existing report and just update it. Okay.
Would we state that report, well, until after they've made their motion, or until after that's on the floor?
No, that's our recommendation.
Right, we do the
So,
recommendation before.
based on what was presented to us,
first.
we are stating we're still recommending moving forward
Yeah.
with the petition as presented. We recommend,
the town clerk does have the authority.
yeah, that,
Procedurally, the
The
motion will be made, and then the
revision of
moderator will ask for
language
the reports
in
from-
item number 3, as presented.
Is it a recommendation or endorsement of an amendment to do such and such, from our perspective at this point?
The planning board only recommends,
Oh, good,
that's it.
Okay.
So we're all set then?
not
Well-
quite yet, you still need a vote. I just wanted to-
Shall I start the dance now?
All right, so we've got a motion and a second to amend the planning board's recommendation to allow for this changed language. I'm trying to restate your motion, just,
Correct.
okay.
Yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to amend planning board's recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
The motion to amend.
Amend our recommendation. We can't amend this.
Okay.
We're amending our recommendation to endorse what we anticipate is going to be a new motion by the petitioner with this language. All right, that was a yes,
Yeah.
okay, so we have moved, seconded, and approved a recommendation for your, what is anticipated amended motion.
That's wonderful. Now, one final question. That's wonderful. Thank you for your help. One final question. Is there anything that you would like to do in terms of a motion to help with that window that exists from now until this bylaw is changed, taking into account all that we've learned about all these different issues that have come up, whether it be the AC, DC, the batteries, the inverters, the noise, or whatever? Is there anything that we can do, or are we just going to accept the risk until we get this new town bylaw?
Well, there's nothing we can do. I mean, the only thing we can do is change the zoning bylaws, and in the meantime, we can, you called it a commission, and I'm going to leave it to a decision. I'm going to leave that decision to the newly constituted planning board in 2 weeks to take up that. My point is, we ought to revisit and look at our solar bylaws holistically, make changes where we think they're necessary, but that's an initiative that should happen after we have a new planning board. We're going to have 2 new members, so for all I know, they're going to convince, the 2 new members are going to convince the rest of us that this is perfect. I don't think that's the case, but I just want to wait till we have a new board.
No, I understand. I think that's reasonable. I guess I was wondering if, and I don't even know if it's possible to do this, if it would be possible to kind of freeze the large residential stuff until that happens.
We can't. I mean,
can't, it's in
we
there.
only have bylaws
Yeah.
that
Okay.
govern us, not anything else.
All right, so then, I guess on that, we're all set then. The only question would be, you put together a shopping list at the last meeting of all the things that you wanted to see addressed in a new bylaw. Do you recall what those were?
Well, I just took them out of my head, but, yeah, I mean, the couple big ones is lessons learned from these last two. Again, just thoughts would be siting of the inverters, where should they be located? I mean, how can we put provisions for the placement of them to put them as far away from residences and buildings as possible? As you know, we work through sound language for the noise abatement. We would want to, as a committee, looking to make recommendations to try to codify what we did with 54 Plain Street, or see if there were improvements that could be made to it.
I think you mentioned fencing, I recall.
Oh, right, fencing requirements, that was something the building commissioner wanted to see in there, fencing right around the arrays.
How about studies? Any requirement for
It's the same
studies?
thing, the setbacks.
Oh, I would leave that to a committee to determine what other studies would be required. But, well, one of the studies would be the noise study.
Right.
Again, potentially, and we need to make sure town council would be fine with these going forward, but sure.
And then, of course, the battery and the AC, DC issue, I think should be discussed.
That was yours. but
That's my
sure.
favorite, yes, I like that. Okay, I
One of the
just
other
wanted to, because people, it may come up at the town meeting tomorrow, they may say, well, what do we need to do? What are we talking about, a new bylaw? So we should be able to discuss that if
There's certainly
necessary.
opportunities to improve it.
And unless it changes, we will have as-of-right permitting for commercial and industrial areas.
Right,
However, to me, there ought to be some type of protection if there is an existing non-conforming residential use, which I'm sure there are plenty of them, then we shouldn't be sticking to the 35-foot or whatever sidelines. There ought to be some type of provision that says, notwithstanding the fact that they're an as-of-right use, that as-of-right does not apply if you're within, pick a distance, 300 feet of a non-conforming residential use. Then if
You
you're
could
within
say
300 feet.
residential structure could, or something. Well,
Well, I
anyway,
mean,
that's
it's-
for
yeah,
another day, but sure. Right, you wanted to look at the setback requirements.
Well, the setbacks in any case, but my point is that setbacks notwithstanding, that under our existing zoning bylaws, in a commercial and industrial use, they are a matter of right. That should not, there should be a special permit requirement when, in the case of a situation in a commercial and industrial area, you're within, and I don't know what the distance is, pick a number, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet of a pre-existing residential use. Because, it makes no sense to allow a solar farm within 35 feet or whatever a sideline is of a house in a commercial zone.
Okay.
That's just me.
okay,
We can,
we're all set?
I think so. So you know that you're going to have to draft this language, okay, and actually read that as your motion.
We'll talk to the moderator first and find out what he wants to do.
Yeah, but you ought to have that language drafted before you talk to him.
Yeah, we'll have that.
And find out who's actually going to move it, whether it's you as petitioners or the finance committee. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Just the planning board got it done.
What's that? No, I just, what is the adage, the discussion of how many angels can fit on the head of a pin, that's what I feel like we've just. Anyway, I think that concludes our agenda.
Real quick, if I may, just to address the board, thank you all for the support and the collective discussion and work in support of the town of Norton. It's been a pleasure working with everybody the past 3 years, so I know that each of you has been on various terms, but it's been great working with everybody. we're all professionals here, and I appreciate everybody's professionalism in our dialogue as we've conducted business, on behalf of the town of Norton. So I appreciate the time I've served. It's been a tremendous learning experience for me on many fronts, being my first opportunity to serve in such a position. So, and I thank everyone for all their collaboration and ongoing work for the town. So thank you all.
Thank you.
It's been mutual.
Don't be a stranger.
I'm a regular reader of the legal notices in the Sun Chronicle now each day, just to see what's coming.
Who's gonna do the gavel, Steve, without you?
Oh, I know. Permission to approach the board.
I think a motion to adjourn is in order, if you want to.
I'll second it.
You'll second that, Frank? As your last go?
Any discussion?
I want
No?
to thank Frank as well.
Yeah.
He's done a fantastic job.
Good luck to
today,
the
as
people
well as
moving
Steve.
on, and thank you very much for your help.
Thank you.
Good luck, Tom.
You just can't stop interrupting me tonight, huh? Just keeps going.
Okay.
Close discussion.
All right.
Okay, I was just waiting for him to finish.
There was some.
Hold on, there's some discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I wanted to thank Stephen and Frank again. They've both done a fantastic job. I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you for that.
Given one of our, and I had the pleasure of serving with Kevin, I know that he brings a good deal of skill to the board, but you guys have set a bar that, Kevin, we expect.
Get out and vote at the next town election, everyone.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Is there a second? I'll second. But
Frank seconded.
Oh, Frank seconded?
All right.
All right.
go.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Hit it.
There we are.